All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the public hearing. Please be aware if you're attending this meeting, our meetings are recorded for future viewing and we are privileged to gather on the traditional territory of the Kwakwaka'wakw. So we'll call the meeting to order. Before I invite petitions and delegations, I'll just read this. Public hearing is being held in accordance with the Local Government Act, Section 465, to allow the public to make comment to the Town of Port McNeill Council regarding the consideration of the Town of Port McNeill Official Community Plan Bylaw number 704, 2021. We will give a presentation to summarize the process. We will have staff give a presentation to summarize the process and provide an outline of the OCP. Once the presentation is completed, all persons will have an opportunity to be heard respecting matters contained in the official community plan. At that time, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand when I call for speakers. When it's your turn to speak, please state your name, street name, then give your view on the proposed bylaw. All people wishing to speak will be heard for a first time, then 2 more opportunities will be provided. Each speaker will be limited to 5 minutes in length. Please keep in mind that the information submitted during this public consultation will form part of public record. Following the presentation, following your presentation to us, members of council may ask you questions about the content of your submission, but they are primarily here to listen and will not debate the issue with you. After the public hearing is over, if no further input is received, council may, without further notice, make a decision about the bylaw. So for petitions and delegations, I'd like to please welcome Kevin Brooks with McElhaney Limited to report on the proposed official community plan. You have to push the button on the outside there, yeah.
How's that? Perfect. Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's nice to be here again to see all of you. It was a lovely drive up from Campbell River today. My name is Kevin Brooks. I'm a senior planner with McElhaney, and I'm here to give just a brief presentation, an overview, to touch base at the highlights of the process and to touch base on the high points of the actual document that is before Council today. Can you bring up the presentation, please, Connor? Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Does that help also?
If it's a little closer, if we can get a little bit more volume on Kevin's mic, please. Thank you.
How's that?
That's better.
Perfect. Next slide, please, Connor. So for a little bit of background, the existing official community plan was established in 1997. Over the last 25 years, as you can imagine, there's been some significant demographic and economic shifts in the area. This has been the impetus for council and the town to proceed with a review of the existing community plan. Next slide, please. Over the course of the project, we've looked at many key topics that have been brought up from the community, from reviewing the existing community plan and through dialogue with the community. Here's some key topics that we did discuss. I'm not going to go through these all in detail, but to give some idea of some of the key things we talked about. Some of the main things that came out of the dialogue was housing is a major issue, and there's a fundamental need for more housing within the community. But there's also a desire for parks, recreation, trails, and those elements to make the community a better place for everyone to live. Next slide, please. When we look at the organization of the document itself, it's organized into about 11 different sections. This just gives you an example of the table of contents at this time. Next slide, please. One of the things that was very clear throughout the process is just recognizing the First Nations and the traditional lands in which Port McNeill resides. So as part of the community plan. We've actually integrated this into the community plan right up front and also touch base on it in some of the policy sections and later on. Next slide, please. When we begin to look at the plan itself, it's broken into multiple sections, some background sections around community context, visioning, and the process that we use for consultation. The community context section itself really focuses on the demographics and the statistics in regards to the community. What's going on now? It's a snapshot of the community in time. We do know there has been questions in regards to the statistics because we used 2016 statistics and the housing needs study that was completed by Urban Matters as part of the process. And the 2021 demographic statistics just came out. And so there has been some questions around that, and that's something that I'm happy to answer questions on right now, really. What the 2021 statistics show is that there was a 0.8% population increase in the 5 years between 2016 and 2021. Those statistics themselves, although very important to the community and something that we do need to keep in mind, don't have a fundamental impact on the direction of the policy itself and the policy that were developed. And I can go into that if people have questions on that for me. Next slide, please. When we look at community involvement, we started our consultation with the community in the fall of 2020. We had numerous different consultation opportunities. We actually did some sessions with council. We had focus groups. We had a workshop in the late fall 2020. We ran 3 different surveys. We had an open house at the end of October last year. And then we had an interactive map where we collected a lot of comments from the community and asked questions of the community of sort of where the community wants to go in the future. Next slide, please. One of the things that's also required when we look at a community plan is the context of the community within the regional area. And we've provided some direction on how this community plan and how Port McNeill, with its future vision, is going to fit into the overall Mount Waddington region. Next slide, please. One of the foundation pieces of the official community plan is the vision and guiding principles. And one of the things or the lenses in which we looked at this community plan is through the lens of community well-being. The community well-being lens really stems from sustainable development and looking at the community in a way that balances the environmental protection, the environmental sustainability components with the economic and social and cultural aspects of the community itself. With that, a vision was developed. Next slide, please. And when we look at those sort of key areas or those key pillars, we looked at those as goals and developed objectives to help frame the policy framework from the comments that we heard from the community moving through the process. Next slide, please. I'm going to transition a little bit and just touch base on sort of the sections that we developed in the actual plan itself and the policy focus of each one of those sections. One of the first sections that we had really was culture and inclusion, and I had mentioned that we integrated some policy framework in regards to the local First Nations. This section also covers off policy framework in regards to the community, immigrants, arts and heritage, and universal accessibility, that ability for people to move in and around the community without barriers to them. That's not only physical barriers, that's all barriers. Next slide, please. Another key element of the plan itself is economic development. What we heard from the community is that downtown revitalization is exceedingly important to the community. There's a fundamental need for the continual support of the local business to help for that revitalization in the community and in downtown, with the need for economic diversification. There was the identification that Port McNeill really should become that base camp for the North Vancouver Island, that place where people come and stay and launch from here to do all the other activities and opportunities that the North Island provides. Next slide, please. So the housing section is actually a requirement under the Local Government Act, where we have to have a housing section to identify key aspects of housing for the community. As I'd mentioned, there was a report done at the regional district to establish a housing plan, which is also a requirement. That was used as a basis to help us identify some of the key needs for the community. And then we worked with the community to identify what the community wants for housing. One of the things that really came out is the need for a diversification of housing stock and much more opportunities for different forms of housing, not only single family homes, but single family homes with suites, potential some townhouses, maybe some more duplexes, just that greater diversity to allow for people to get into different forms of housing on a more affordable. Also, providing housing that allows people to stay in the community as they age. Next slide, please. Climate and the environment is the next section. Greenhouse gas reduction goals and climate is actually a legislative requirement again. The Local Government Act requires that section to be part of the official community plan. The town had actually signed on to some climate change reduction commitments already through the regional district, and those are integrated into this community plan. And then we also looked at other opportunities to help protect natural assets in the community. Next slide, please. The land use section I call the meat and potatoes of an official community plan. This is one of the key aspects of any community plan, is how and where the community will grow for commercial use, land use, and other land uses such as residential. So this policy all focuses around the land use policies themselves, where the residential land is going to be, where the future industrial land is going to be, where future boundary extensions could potentially occur. Next slide, please. These are the updated maps, and you'll see on these maps, the yellow on this map, I know that's very small and I have the actual blow-up maps on the next slide so we can see these a little bit more clearly. The gray area represents the downtown. The purple area represents potential future industrial uses. The yellow area is the area predominantly for residential purposes. And there's also other uses, of course, such as parks, institutional uses, things of that nature. Next slide, please. This is the map blown up a bit. The blue area is those institutional uses, and as you can see, the red area for commercial, purple for industrial, and the dark green aspects of this map. Next slide, please. In this, you can just see there is an area that has been identified through consultation with the community, consultation with council, about some potential for future industrial uses out on the Mine Road area. Next slide, please. Parks and Recreation was a very rich conversation that we had with the community. It's very clear through our conversations with the community that the importance of recreational opportunities, access to those recreational opportunities is exceedingly important. This is reflected in the active transportation project that occurred, and reflected in the need for trails and connectivity, which I'll touch base on a little bit in the transportation section also. One of the things that really came out is that idea of livable and accessible community throughout the conversations that we had. Next slide, please. Infrastructure and growth. This is another one of those sections that is required by the province to have in your community plan. One of the things we did touch base on is how the community wants to grow. How many people the community wants to grow by, and there's direction that the community does actually want to grow in a reasonable manner to help provide those services for the community and amenities in the future. One of this section really looks at servicing, water, sanitary, and storm drainage as a key component, where that lies within the community and the future potential asset management of that infrastructure. And in this section, we also talk about boundary extension and when boundary extension actually makes sense for the community and where that boundary extension could potentially occur. Next slide, please. Next is the transportation section. Again, as with the infrastructure section, we need to identify where those roads are located and when road expansion might make sense. But a key component of this section really is the idea of active transportation, how people are going to move around the community, and how to provide opportunities for alternative modes of transportation. Right now with $2 a liter gas, those are one of those things that as communities grow in the future and gasoline continues to get more expensive, that there's just opportunity for all alternatives. This also speaks to the idea of the trail connectivity from the active transportation plan, and not trail connectivity just internal to the town itself, but also trail connectivity to the trails in the regional district and how to connect that trail system across the broader area. Next slide, please. And so in the last section, sort of last but not least, is really a section regarding implementation. In this section, we identify some key strategic planning opportunities that the town has. It also talks about the different tools for implementation, not just of the official community plan, but different tools for implementation, such as the zoning bylaw, which there'll be a public hearing in the future on the zoning bylaw, but tools such as something that's called development approval information, which allows council to ask for additional information at time of development to help the community make decisions. The idea of development permit guidelines that helps the town and council control what your community looks like, and things like temporary use permits that allows for flexible opportunities for different uses to occur in the community and give that flexibility to the community and potential developers within the town. Next slide, please. With that, I'd like to thank you. Council, if you have any questions of me, of course, and I can answer any questions that the gallery may have.
All right. At this time, I will ask our CAO, Peter Nelson Smith, if he could make presentation of any submissions on the proposed Town of Fort McNeil official community plan bylaw that was written. That were written.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I did not receive any written submissions in regards to the official community plan. However, I just want to take this opportunity to address the package that was released for this official community plan did have some errors in the mapping. I wanted to bring that forward. When I put together the package, I accidentally drew from old maps that didn't reflect some of the requests that council made at a November meeting. So for the proposed land use maps, there is an area adjacent to what we know is our Fort McNeil Hospital that was shown as proposed institutional. It was actually meant to be residential, and that shows up on the new maps that we have. And there was also some areas around the Mine Road, Campbell Way, that were shown as commercial, which are actually residential. And so the new maps do reflect those changes. So I thought I would bring that to everybody's attention as we move forward with this process.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So at this time, I will open it up to the public to give an opportunity to speak. Again, if you would like to speak, you're required to give us your full name and residential address prior to. Each speaker will be limited to 5 minutes in length. And keep in mind that the information submitted during this public consultation will form part of the public record. So I'll make the first call for speakers. I will call a first time for speakers. Is there anyone that wishes to speak? Okay, go ahead, sir. Just one moment. We'll get you a mic. If you can.
My name is Jacques Godet. I live at 2010 Chelan. And my preoccupation is more about the, like I read in it and I can see it around me, like people are getting older in this town. And at one point, so when we cannot live in our dwelling anymore and there is nobody to take care of us, right now the only choice is to leave this town. And I've been living here for 40 years or over 40 already. And I choose to live here because I like about this and everything. I wouldn't like to have, to go to Camber River to finish it off. That would be nice if I could stay around here. And so that's my preoccupation right now.
So seniors housing, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, I will. Oh, sorry, Stephanie. Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand. Go ahead.
Hi. I was wondering about,
If you could state your name and your
oh,
address.
okay,
please.
sorry, I'm Stephanie Coe. And so I'm looking at the
And
map.
your address, sorry.
Oh, Kinkham Place. Live in the Port McNeil Apartments. Housing is important, of course, for sure. Especially apartments. The apartments are getting old. So we need, definitely need some large development. But I'm looking at the map for residential along the water from Beach Drive. There's that trail between Lemaire Beach Camp to the end of Beach Drive. And I'm wondering if that could be turned into recreational between the old logging road and the water.
Is
So-
that, could you clarify?
So if you look at the road where Beach Drive ends right there,
Yes,
and you see the line that leads to the purple industrial, I believe that's the old logging road. And people have built trails through there. So it's a really great beachfront. It's really our only access to recreational. So I'm wondering if that could be turned into recreational. There's not a lot of recreational, and that's an important place for walking dogs and taking kids.
Okay.
Yeah. Hoy Bay.
thank you. I was just going to say, is that the area we refer to as Hoy Bay? Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
the name's not on the map, so yeah, Hoy Bay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll call a second time for speakers. Is there anyone that wishes to speak?
My name is Patty Hawley. I live at 770 Landquest. My question is also about the Hoya Bay area. Several years ago, it was brought up that there was going to be multi-use development for housing in that area. Is that ever going to come to fruition, or is it something that has been left behind?
So I'll just refer to staff. Can you answer that question? So there's Hoy Bay and then the other section, so.
You weren't paying attention? Several years ago, in one of the plans, there at meetings like this, there was discussion about developing, not necessarily the Hoya Bay, but extending Beach Drive up into that direction. And there was talk of multi-purpose housing, like single family housing, multiple, and I'm not sure what all, but there was talk about that. And it's kind of fallen off. I'm curious. I don't know of it. Maybe it is still in the thoughts.
Thanks. Now I've caught up. Thank you. Just so everybody else can see me as well. So that property between the end of Beach Drive, what we know as the end of Beach Drive from Hoy Bay out to Beach Camp, was zoned Comprehensive Development 1 many years back. It's privately owned land. Of course, at this juncture, we don't have the opportunity to force development. So it's essentially relying on those private owners to have that developed. So that's where we stand with that right now.
Does that answer your question? Okay. Oh, there's someone in the back there.
Lynn Wilson, 2142 Northland Road. Just, I'm asked repeatedly myself through my own career about residential housing and people looking for different styles of housing development, such as tiny homes and seniors housing and varied living opportunities throughout our town. Wondering how that is being addressed and if the town is moving forward with developmental plans of the 10 acres up on Campbell Way and down beyond the waterfront there in the Mosaic land area, et cetera.
So first question was. Sorry? Yeah, that's what I was going to do. Please.
Thank you, Council. Thank you very much for the question. So for alternative housing forms, things like tiny homes, secondary suites, townhouses, all that, we've actually provided a fairly comprehensive policy framework to allow council to consider those forms of housing in the future. Again, that housing diversity is fundamental, especially the gentleman was speaking to the need for seniors housing and that ability to age in place. We've definitely, through the housing section, have added a lot of policy framework to allow council the ability to consider all those forms of housing as in the future.
Was there a second question, Lynn? Did that answer? I think that was your first question. Yeah. There's nothing really to comment at this time. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Cord Oppen. I live at 805 Lindquist. I wanted to ask another question about housing specifically. And I get the sense that the zoning would be in place or could be in place if we had a developer, either local or, you know, a bigger company from out of town that was willing to create a multifamily dwelling, you know, a 3-story kind of apartment complex, but new and nice and attractive. And I also get a sense by observing the very low vacancy rates and how quickly things sell and how quickly things rent, that if we had such a facility of 60 or 50 rooms or suites or whatever, that it would likely fill up. It would be rented in no time at all, just based on what we've seen and observed from how quickly things rent, how quickly things sell. And I wonder if you've explored the reasons why we have not been able to attract that kind of building, either from some of our local business leaders or, you know, bigger companies like Boardwalk or these big national rental companies. And I wondered if you'd been able to identify what their obstacles are to doing that in Port McNeill. Would it be the high construction costs for North Island, or would it be perhaps the high cost of land? But have you been able to identify what their reluctance is, either from local companies and developers and property owners or from these bigger companies?
Okay, I'll have staff answer that, either Kevin or.
I could partially answer that, but I certainly won't be able to answer it in deep detail because it's actually a very, very complex question. My understanding of why you probably haven't seen a large apartment building, purpose-built rental really is all market right now. It's a combination, or the historical market. The market that's happening in Port McNeill right now, Port McNeil is already seeing a lot of people come here and kicking tires to do that kind of development now. And we're beginning to see that. And you're seeing that due to the nature of the housing market in other markets. Why hasn't it happened yet? And I think you touched on it. It's not land value, because land value in Port McNeill is actually, compared to the rest of the island, is actually very affordable. But construction cost is very, very high. And so you have a combination of the rental market here will be actually relatively low, like the ability to charge the required rents with a really high construction cost is likely one of the limiting factors for seeing that form of housing currently. That is beginning to change, and we're seeing that change. The latest assessments that came out and the valuation of lots and things of that nature, the market is changing in Port McNeill, and you're likely going to see a lot more land development beginning to occur here. It takes a bit of momentum, but you already have some subdivision for duplexes and things like that that are occurring here. And you're going to see that momentum build, I believe, based on the current market that we're seeing for real estate right across North Vancouver Island.
Thank you, Kevin. Go ahead.
I'm going to ask where is the land that is zoned for apartment development, duplex development, triplex development. The town has a lot of land in its holdings, and how long are they going to hang on to that or put it on the market for development? Oh, I forgot to say my name. Lee Holly, 770 Lanquist.
Sorry, I forgot to remind you.
That's
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you very much for the question, Lee. I can't speak specifically to town-owned lands and how council is going to proceed with town-owned land development. If that's a process in and of itself, and there's a lot of complex process that council needs to go through to make those kinds of decisions. In regards to lands available for the other forms of development, the zoning bylaw in Port McNeill is actually a very progressive zoning bylaw. Even the current iteration, without the amendments, there's a lot of ability for the diversity of housing types to occur already in the existing zoning bylaw, either R1, R2, and so there's a lot of land available. There is land available for that. Plus, you have the CD zone parcel of land that Mr. Nelson Smith has spoken to. That is very, very flexible zoning to allow for diverse housing types. So the opportunities there, again, I just believe it's that market hasn't quite, the market in Port McNeill hadn't quite caught up. But like I said, we're seeing that change very quickly. I've been working with Mr. Mork and Mr. Nelson Smith recently on numerous different projects that have been discussed and that could be coming forward very shortly. And a lot of those projects are really diverse housing types. So we like I said, we are seeing it beginning to happen.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, hi, I'm Gary Keeble. I live at 590 Venture Place. Going up the hill from Cal Tire, just past Jensen, there's a huge lot that was sold sometime last year. I believe it's about 600 feet wide, 700 feet wide maybe. It was cleared a couple of times, and I just wanted to know what kind of development's going to be going in there.
yeah, I'll let staff answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Keeble. So due to the fact that the development isn't currently underway, it hasn't been approved, I'm actually not at a point that I'm privileged to speak about it. But when that information does become publicly available, I'd be happy to speak on it.
Okay, I'll call for a third time for speakers. Is there anyone wishing to speak? This is the third and final opportunity. Okay, so seeing none, this public hearing is now declared closed. I will remind council we are not permitted to receive any more public input regarding the proposed bylaw now that the public process is closed. Should anyone come forward that had an opportunity to view the change maps, please direct them to staff if they have any comments. Adjournment then, correct? Yeah. Okay. So oh, right. Yes, because we haven't. Sorry. I'll just double check because there are some people online, and because of our presentation screen, we were not able to see if anyone online would like to make a comment. I'll ask a second time for anybody online would like to make a comment. If you put in the chat box, we will be able to bring you into the meeting so that you'll be able to speak. And I'll ask one more time, is there anybody online that's wishing to make a comment? Okay. I don't think so. So do I have to do a motion to adjourn or just call adjournment? Sorry, this is a new process for us, so.
Thank you. You can call adjournment. However, maybe just a reminder before everybody gets up and leaves, we are going to do a draw for the iPads as soon as this meeting's adjourned.
Okay, so this meeting is now adjourned. And we will draw for the iPad. 2 iPads, actually. You want to help me out here? Okay, Councillor Barron has drawn 2 names. So the first one who has won an iPad is Suzanne, and I don't have a last name, so we will phone you on the number provided. And the second is Clint Ewan. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate you coming, and thank you so much for being part of the process that led us to this point. Thank you.